Hi, today I'm going to help you answer all of your how to bake a cake at home from scratch questions. I get asked how to bake a cake questions all the time, and there are a couple of common theme questions that come up quite often, so I wanted to answer those for you today. I'm Amanda Gulik from cleverdoughcakes.com, and I bring you tasty, yummy recipes and fun cake decorating ideas. So if that's something that you're interested in, then do make sure that you hit subscribe if you enjoy this video and hit the notification bell so that you'll know the next time my video comes out. If you've come back, welcome back. Let's dive right in and get your questions answered on how to bake a cake at home from scratch. Okay, so here we are inside my cake YouTube channel, and this is my most popular video, how to bake a cake, how to make a cake at home for beginners with no butter and no milk. All right, so I get a lot of questions asked, especially about butter and milk, no butter and no milk. And I actually put together another playlist of questions and answers that you can check out over here, but I'll touch on a couple of those questions today. But if you want more in depth, then do make sure you head on over there and check them out. I'll put a link at the end of this video for you. So yes, it is true. There is no butter and no milk in my sponge cake. The reason for that is that butter, milk, oil, they're very fatty and they're very heavy, and they will actually make your sponge cake sink, and you'll end up with more of a heavy pound cake. So if you're looking for a pound cake, then yes, you can use butter or milk. But if you're looking for a nice, light, fluffy sponge cake like I show you how to make in this video, then make sure you don't add any milk and no butter and no oil. And that way the egg whites will get a chance to fluff up really high and stay filled with air, and you'll have a nice, light, fluffy cake. It's really nice. Okay, so I have another question that I'm going to answer before we head on into the comments, and that is this. Because this actually happened like today. My nieces were making a cake for their mom's birthday, and they never made a cake from this box that they were using before. And the box told them to use 2 cake pans, but they only used 1. And so they had enough batter that it actually filled the whole cake pan. When that happens, you don't have any space for the cake to rise. And as it rises, it doesn't have a lot of structure to it yet. So if you fill your cake pan all the way to the top, your cake batter is going to bubble over and drip down into your oven as you bake. So the tip is always fill your cake pan to about the halfway mark. You want to give your cake double the space to pop up and over, but be strong enough to hold its cake form. Okay, so fill your cake pans only halfway, never all the way to the top, or you're going to get a big mess in your oven. Okay, hope that was handy. If you thought that was a good tip, give me a like and let me know. And if you thought it was a bad tip, give me a like or an upside down like, because I need to know that too. Cane Growers Transporter says, I did not see properly, are those egg whites heated? And if I don't have a mixer, what can I use instead? And Regan Nate down here says, hi, did you use cream of tartar on the egg whites? Is the egg whites on room temperature or just from the fridge? Thanks in advance. All right, so Kane and Regan, great questions. So let's answer the one about, are the eggs heated? No, they are not heated. You don't want to have your eggs already pre-cooked before you start using them in your cake batter. It's a very good question about whether or not to use room temperature eggs or eggs from the fridge. So I have used eggs directly from the fridge and it works fine. The benefit to using room temperature eggs is that when you're fluffing up the egg whites, it's going to have more elasticity. It's going to be able to grab more air bubbles, and you're going to get a lighter, fluffier cake. Again, if the eggs are colder, it's going to be more condensed, more dense. It's going to drag your cake down. So room temperature if possible. Now, if you have them right in the fridge and you went to make your cake and you're like, oh, I forgot to put my cakes out to let them warm up, you can put your eggs in a bowl of warm water, not hot water, just for 2 or 3 minutes, just to warm them up a little bit. And that is perfectly fine. Now, the next question was whether or not to use cream of tartar in the egg whites, which is a great question and a very logical one, because a lot of meringue cakes and meringue cookies do call for cream of tartar as a way of holding the form of the egg whites. However, in this sponge cake recipe that we're going through right now, you don't need the cream of tartar because we're going to bake it, and it's got the flour, it's got baking powder in there, it's got other ingredients that are going to do the same thing as the cream of tartar would. So if you were making just a meringue, the cream of tartar would be great for holding the peaks. But because we're using a cake recipe, we don't need to add cream of tartar. So I hope that answered that question for you. Now, the question about whether or not, or what to do if you don't have a mixer. So in my How to Bake a Cake video that you can see here, I actually am showing you how to make a sponge cake. And with a sponge cake, you have to separate your egg yolks and your egg whites so that you can whip up your egg whites nice and fluffy and light, and then fold in your mixed up egg yolks so that it doesn't sag and become heavy and dense, right? To keep that light, fluffy texture. So if you don't have a hand mixer, which is what I use in this video, or you don't have one of those stand mixers, you know, the KitchenAid stand mixers, don't worry, okay, because we can go old school. And in the olden days, and yes, I am old enough to have done this many times, we use a whisk. And it could be a metal whisk, it could be one of these non-stick whisks. It doesn't matter. But the whisk allows for the egg whites to capture the air bubbles and fluff up. And if you don't have a whisk on hand and you don't have time to go out and get one, or with social distancing right now, you don't want to be in stores, you probably have a fork. And a fork will do the same trick. It's got the spaces in between to catch the eggs and hold the air bubbles. So you can totally whip up your egg whites with a fork. And when you're using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, it's only going to take you a couple, maybe half a minute to really fluff up those egg whites. But when you're using a whisk or a fork, you're going to have to use good old-fashioned elbow grease to get it whipped up. So it's going to take you a couple of minutes. So you'll get a nice muscle in the end. But it totally works, and I have used both of these successfully. So you don't need a mixer. If you want to know what mixer I use and what I recommend, I have a link in the video or in the description below with the ones that I personally enjoy using the most. Okay, on to our next question. De Silva Gloria asks a really great question. She asks, please, can I use a blender to whisk the eggs? And that is a great question. And I can understand why you would think, okay, if I don't have a mixer or I don't have a whisk or a fork, then can I just use my blender? The problem is a blender is going to cut through all of the air bubbles and you're going to get a very, very dense cake. So I do not recommend using a blender. Honestly, use a fork. I'm pretty sure you probably have a fork, and if you don't have a fork, you could probably use 2 chopsticks, or you could use 2 knives, just so that you have some space between to get the air bubbles in there, okay? So not a blender, but a fork, totally acceptable. A mixer, so much easier, especially if you don't have a lot of strength. As you know, I'm a lung patient, or if you don't know, I'm a lung patient. You can see what happened to me in these videos over here. But I have to be very careful with my energy, and so using a fork now is too difficult for my lungs to handle. So I like using the blenders, or not the blenders, the mixers that I shared in the link below for you. Okay, so Itzel Espino has a great question. Itzel asks, is it okay to use vanilla extract and no lemon extract, or is the lemon extract mandatory in this recipe? Okay, so this is a lemon sponge cake. So it is the best if you have lemon extract, but if you don't, if you have lemon juice, that is a fabulous alternative. And to be honest, I actually enjoy using lemon juice more now than lemon extract because it's got such a fresh and a tanginess to it that just makes, it complements the sponge cake really well. But if you don't have lemon at all, don't let that stop you from making this cake. You can totally make this cake with just the vanilla extract. It's just going to end up being a little bit of a sweeter cake, so you might want to take a little bit of the sugar out, or maybe just do a less sweet icing on top of it at the end. But that is a great question, and feel free to try other flavors. That is the whole point of baking a cake, is to have fun and try different flavors and different measurements and see what's going to work best for you. My sponge cake recipe is so versatile and it's so forgiving that I often, if I don't have 6 eggs, which is how much my cake calls for, I'll do 4 eggs. Or if I have more people coming to the birthday party, I'll put 8 eggs in, and then I leave the rest of the ingredients pretty much the same. If you want a smaller cake, you could just do half the amount of ingredients. If you want to double the size of the cake, then you just double the ingredients. It's super versatile, so you're really going to love it, and it's so simple to make. All right, so Fatuma Haida asks, but no need for cooking oil or butter in the mixture, and that is correct. No butter, oil, or milk in the sponge cake recipe because it will make the cake dense and heavy, and you'll end up with more of a pound cake. This is a sponge cake which is light and fluffy and airy, and the only way to keep the egg whites to really hold that fluffiness is not to add any kind of a fat to the cake batter. So you want to definitely no milk, no butter, no oil. Just use the ingredients in this cake recipe, which honestly just come down to 6 eggs, a cup of flour, a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, or you can actually do half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, and a little bit of, about a teaspoon of vanilla, teaspoon of lemon juice. That's it. That's all you need. So check out how to make this cake in my How to Bake a Cake from Scratch at Home video. Oh, this is a fabulous question. I apologize. I am not sure I'm going to do your name justice. Let's give it a try though. Aluwada Minaloa Lawson. And again, I do apologize if I said that incorrectly. Do you add yeast and butter to it, please? So again, the butter I've already explained, but no yeast. Yeast is something you would use more in like a donut or a bread, something that needs to expand that doesn't have a ton of eggs that are already doing it. So because our cake recipe has egg whites that are going to do the expanding and egg yolks that are going to do the expanding, it's got baking powder in it that's going to help get those egg whites and egg yolks to hold their structure, we don't need yeast. Yeast, again, is more for donuts and biscuits, and well, not biscuits, but breads and things like that. So no yeast required. Oh, and a question I get asked a lot, it's not right here right now, I think it's down the list somewhere, is what kind of cake flour to use for this cake recipe. And I actually don't use a cake flour. I use just a regular flour, whatever honestly is on sale at the time, just any all-purpose flour. The reason you don't want to use a cake flour in this particular recipe is because we are adding baking powder to it and salt to it, and we don't add those ingredients if we're using a cake flour because they're already incorporated in the cake flour, so you don't want to double up on that. So I recommend just use plain all-purpose flour, and then you know that the cake will come out really well. This is a really great question from Shahed Mohammed. This is a great video. Thank you. I attempted to make it today and it turned out well, but it was dry inside and did not rise, only partially. Please be kind to advise where I've gone wrong. I'm just starting to bake, so making mistakes. No worries. We all have this happen to us. So the first part of your question about it was dry inside. A sponge cake is typically more dry than an average cake, so that is okay. The way that you can combat that, there are 2 ways. You can cook it a little slower on a lower temperature, and that will help it keep its moisture a bit better. The other way is when your cake is finished, after it is cooled, you can sprinkle it with a simple syrup, which is 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of water boiled together to a certain point. Maybe I'll make a video in the future showing you how to make a simple syrup, but that is a great way in order to keep your cake nice and moist. But yes, a sponge cake recipe is a bit drier than your average cake recipe, but because of the sponginess, it's fabulous. So just lower the temperature, let it cook a little bit longer, and that will help. Oh, and another answer for this, as far as it didn't rise all the way, there is a trick you can do. All right, so this is an icing rose. It looks like a nail with a nice big flat surface on it, and this is what you use to pipe roses for on top of your cake. you can use this as a trick to get your cake to rise better. So here's my cake pan. Before putting your batter in, if you take your cake rose and put it upside down in the center of the pan and then put your batter in, when your cake is finished and you take out your cake and then you would just lift out the icing rose. But in the meantime, while it's baking, what it's doing is it's conducting the heat so that it's spreading it more evenly across the baking of the cake. And so this gets hot as well as the sides and the bottom, and that will evenly distribute the heat, and it will help your sponge cake stay arisen better. So that is a great tip if you have one of these. If you don't have one of these, well, you could get creative and find what kind of metal object that is okay to go in your oven that you could use, but this is the best choice. And you could also use a piece of aluminum foil that you crinkle up in the center and try that and see if it will conduct for you. But that's a really great tip to help. I get some funny comments here. This lovely person here, Ethan Gia, says, dang, this chick is old. Well, yeah, I'm not a young chick anymore, but I'm not really old either. All right. So this is a question I get a lot as well from Ivy. Why did you put 6 eggs in? And that is, again, because it is a sponge cake recipe. It requires a lot of eggs in order to rise and hold the air bubbles. Other cake mixtures rely more on the condensing of the flour with the eggs and the milk and the butter to provide the bulk. But because a sponge cake has so few ingredients, it needs the eggs to really do the bulk work of the cake. And so that's why we use 6 eggs in this recipe. Okay, so I have a really great question here from Anuna, 83. Hi, love the cake, tried it today. However, wanted to ask, when do you add the vinegar? That is a great question, because in my original video, I don't talk about the vinegar. And I have learned, because that was over a decade ago when I made that video. And what I've learned is that you can actually bulk up the egg whites even more and get them to be even more elastic and grab more air bubbles if you add a teaspoon of white vinegar to your egg whites. So when you're separating your egg whites and your egg yolks, you'd have them in 2 bowls. The egg whites, you would put a teaspoon of white vinegar in there and then fluff that up. The egg yolks is where you put your vanilla, your lemon extract, and your sugar before whipping that up and then folding the 2 together. So that is the answer as to when to put the vinegar in. You don't need the vinegar, but it will help your eggs expand even more and give you an even lighter, fluffier cake, and you don't taste the vinegar as long as you're not like putting in a huge amount. 1 teaspoon, you don't taste the vinegar, but it will help expand your eggs. And this one just warmed my heart. Natilsa said that I am the Bob Ross of baking, which just fills my heart because Bob Ross is somebody I absolutely admired. I spent years painting his paintings and watching his videos. So thank you so much for that lovely compliment. Mwah, that is one of the best compliments I could ever get. Bob Ross was known for his peaceful, happy, optimistic, helpful attitude, and to think that you consider me to be the same in the baking world means a lot, so thank you. Oh, this is a comment I get a lot, because again, I made my how to bake a cake video over a decade ago, before I really understood what you guys wanted to see here on YouTube. And so I got this comment here from Seiram. I hope I said that right. I apologize if I didn't. Gavaris. And they say, I'm sad because I didn't see you slice it up. And that is absolutely true. In that video, I never did get to the stage of icing it and slicing it up. Instead, I direct you to my mocha buttercream icing video. And that is the icing I put on the cake, and then yes, I slice it up. In my newer videos, which you can see at the end of this video or down in the description below, then you'll see that yes, I do let you see what they look like on the inside. So I apologize. Over a decade ago when I made this how to bake a cake video, I did not show how to cut it and what the inside looked like, but from now on, I always do. And so go and check out some of my newer videos and you'll get a chance to see that. But thank you for asking about that. All right, so that is it for today. I hope I answered some of your most important cake baking questions and that you found some of these tips helpful. If so, then give me a thumbs up. Let me know. If you felt that I didn't help you, then give me a thumbs down because I need to know that too. Leave me a comment below with what is your biggest baking challenge when it comes to baking a cake. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know that as well. If you have a friend who really wants to start baking and could probably use a little bit of help, then please share this video with them and let them know about my original How to Bake a Cake video. Go and try it and then leave me a comment and let me know what you think of it. Okay, so now head on over here and I'm going to show you how I actually made over $4,000 baking a cake. I know, a cake that cost me $20 to make and it's made me over $4,000. So go and watch that video and see how on earth I did that. And if you're interested in having your cakes featured on my channel, then check this video out here and I'll tell you how you can get that done. I'll see you over here.